Okay, we got on the bus to Jackson after quite a melee and a problem of desegregating the areas, in the bus station, the ticket counter, the separate bathrooms and the separate waiting rooms and so on. So when we got on board the bus, it was pretty obvious who we were, and a black guy came up to me and said, "You guys freedom riders?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I fought for my country. I'd like to start fighting for my people. Where do I go?" I said, "Follow me." And we walked. I sat in the back of the bus to desegregate. We walked up front, and there was an empty seat on an aisle. I ushered him to it. He sat down next to a white man, and there was a white woman occupying the aisle seat, and I crawled over her and sat by the window, but continued to talk to this veteran. And I'm sorry, I have that wrong. She was sitting by the window, and I sat down and was talking with him, and then she asked me to stand up because she wanted to move into the aisle seat. She said she was fixing to get off at the next stop. So I stood up. She moved over and occupied both seats, stretched her legs out, and then refused to move. And the bus began to fill up, and people were standing in the aisle. I said, "Isn't that a little bit unfair?" He said, "Well, I've got titillations in my legs." I said, "Well, people are standing." So finally she moved over into the aisle seat. And I gestured to this woman standing in the aisle, who happened to be an African-American woman, and ushered her to the window seat, and she went along with it. There was a howl and a curse by the other white bus passengers calling me everything under the sun. And then I stood there, continued to talk to the veteran, and we arrived in a town. Every town we arrived in had these big placards, White Citizens Council, that denounced us in all kinds of terms. But in this town, the bus driver rushed out of the bus, grabbed the sheriff, and brought him back on board. It was Sheriff Jim Clark. We were in Selma, Alabama. And he grabbed me by the throat here and said, "You a nigger lover, kid?" I said, "I love all people." I lied. Didn't love him that moment. But he turned to the woman and said, "He been bothering you?" "No, Sheriff, he ain't bothered me," she said. "Well, I think he has." "Well, I got to go to Texas. Folks are waiting for me there." He said, "Don't worry, we'll hold this bus. It ain't going nowhere, lady. But you come with us. We want you to sign some papers." So they took her off the bus, and she went rushing, titillating legs and all. And then he put me in handcuffs, took me off. I gave a little speech. I thought it was the last I'd see civilization. Turned to the bus and I said words to the effect of, "Well, they can stop me, but they can't stop us, and we'll be here until every person." I sort of tried to repeat what Dr. King had said. And I was thrown into jail. For a while, for that whole evening, I was in a separate cell. But I guess it was the next morning, the way they came into the jail cell, you couldn't see. It was all artificial light. There were no windows to the outside. They opened the doors and went out into a bullpen. And the warden came along outside the bullpen. And he dragged two guys who were leaning back and forth. They're obviously heavily inebriated, and they said that they're Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And they told the white prisoners, everything was segregated in the South, especially the jails. And these white prisoners were egged on to beat the hell out of me, and told that I was there to destroy their way of life, to put their wives, mothers, sisters, daughters into bed with African Americans, and that they ought to redeem the South. But then the warden said, "Just don't leave any marks on him, boys, because the FBI's been asking about him." So for a while they just slapped me around and pushed me back and forth and cursed me and so on. And I think we should put Mississippi on trial. I think we should ask Haley Barbour, the current governor of Mississippi, to exonerate all those who were arrested, not just pardon them, but exonerate them, to pay damages into a fund directed at the black community in Mississippi, which is no better off today than it was when we went to jail. To reduce the gap, the differences between black and white in Mississippi, where the gap is greatest of all the 50 states. To investigate the assassination of more than 50 civil rights activists